enjoying this series? Well, welcome to our 5th presentation of the JFK 60 series, sponsored by the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of North Texas and JFK expert Mr. Dory Wiley. Before I turn the floor over to Mr. Wiley, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping suggestions. Please silence your cell phones. I'm watching. Also, we have some staff that are coming around to take your plates, so no need to get up and bust them yourselves. We've had some people try and be that helpful, so if you just stay put, they'll come around and pick them up for you. Also, if you will hold your questions until the end of the presentation, that way we can come around with a microphone so you are heard and captured on our video. This presentation lasts 90 minutes, and we will hold the last 15 minutes for questions. We are also fortunate enough to have a book signing at the end of this presentation from 7 to 7:30. Me? Oh, hang on. Hang on.
No. I need you to go. You need to go.
No, I can get through.
No.
Here we go.
I don't want you to.
He's so sweet.
We'll turn it on when it's time to start.
Thank you.
So the last 15 minutes will be questions. We'll go around with microphones back and forth. I was at the book signing. From 7 to 7:30, Judyth Baker will be out here signing her books. There are 2 different books for sale. If you want to participate in the book sale and book signing, if you'll exit this door and just make your way down the hall, that would be fantastic. Very interesting books. So I will go ahead and turn the floor over to Mr. Wiley. Here we go.
How is everyone? Can you hear me? Great. Thanks for coming again. I told Stephanie I thought this was a great success, and she said, "Nah, don't flatter yourself. We're serving lots of wine." But we will endeavor to pursue our journey and continue this learning here. Hopefully you picked up a lot. As you noticed, when I lecture, I tend to use a fire hose method. And I dump a lot of facts. That's just sort of what I like to do. So it's going to be a little bit different format tonight. I want to kind of review briefly what we've done. On the first night, I went over the assassination and raised a lot of questions. Everybody agree with that? They got a lot of questions? You want answers? Okay, we're going to raise some more questions, okay? I didn't get through the whole thing. I will probably cover the rest of that presentation at the University of North Texas Law School on November 10th, if you're going to that. So I think you'll enjoy that, and you'll obviously enjoy the tour of the museum there. We did the Dealey Plaza, 6th floor museum. I hope you enjoyed a little visit on life history, the sniper training. Everybody understands the magic bullet now, right? Everybody's got that. Well, we're beating a dead horse there. We don't need to visit with that anymore. Okay. And hopefully the perspective of, the guy that led the investigation on the House Select Committee of Assassinations was interesting to you. It's a little more credibility than me telling you about it, because he's still around, and it's so exciting to kind of be visiting with some of these people that are still around. I just visited with a 97-year-old guy who remembered meeting JFK in Boston. And so I appreciated him bringing that up. Tonight is Judyth Baker. We'll get to that. Another key witness. And then the trial you've never heard about is what I finished on 11/2. And then the 10th, we have the Law Museum. For a whole picture here, what we're doing is introducing you to questions and live witnesses. That's kind of the format I like teaching on this, because there'll be a day where we don't have any more witnesses. But
No.
it's amazing what Sorry, that didn't sound overly optimistic.
That's
It's way off from now, about 50 years from now. But we're getting new witnesses, which are turning up because some of their parents were involved and no one knew about it. And all of a sudden, the parents pass away and there's an inheritance of things, and all of a sudden, some things pop up. So there will always be something to talk about on that side. I'm kind of quietly building a case here, okay? Hopefully you see that. I don't really want to convince anybody of something they don't want to believe, but I want them to ask questions. And as I said in the very first evening, I want you to do your own research. Don't believe anything because I told you, or Judyth, or anyone else. Do it because you ask questions. This is something you have to ask questions about and not listen to us or the government or the media or some other researcher. If you really want to know the answer, you have to ask some questions and use your own common sense and logic and see if you put pieces together. So what we're doing is we kindly are putting pieces together. Now what we're going to do tonight is we're going to put some pieces together with Judyth Baker. She's an eyewitness, okay? But she has one of the most incredible story, and in some people's minds it may be incredulous, okay? It was hard for me to get my mind wrapped around it. But that's happened numerous times in researching JFK things. You get on a tangent, and then next thing you know, it's really important, and it's the craziest thing you ever heard of. This is really important because she's a fact witness, and she's seen a lot of things. So some of the pieces I'm trying to put together for you are players that were involved in the assassination. She knew. And she knows that some of these players knew each other and associated with each other, which is really important. So think of this almost as a courtroom, and you're part of the jury, okay? I'm gonna ask her some questions. My friend Steve Kennedy, no relation to the Kennedy family, is a trial attorney, very successful litigator, and he's gonna be up here and cross-examine her a little bit. He's stuck in traffic, but he'll get here because he knows I'm long-winded and I'll talk for a little bit anyway. The important thing, I'm going to try to get through this really quick and not get too bogged down, which would be my fault, not your fault. But I want you to know some of the players I'm going to be asking her about. And some of the questions, you may or may not understand why I'm asking them. You can ask me later, but just understand I'm trying to create something for the historical record with Judyth. This has never been done before. She's been interviewed. She's been on TV.
Many times.
She's been the Men Who Killed Kennedy series. You can pull that up on YouTube. She's the last episode. There's a new one called out, The Kill Shot. She's been interviewed on that. You can find all kinds of interviews, and she lectures all the time. I'm not trying to do that. We're going to get some of her story out tonight, but we don't have all that time. The key thing that I want to get out is some eyewitness testimony. Now, it just so happens, she happens to be one of the best JFK assassination researchers out there. And so I use her as a resource. Why? Because she has this incredible IQ and memory, and remembers everything. And so she's just a store of information. So we'll get back to her in a minute. Right now, I just want to introduce some players that we're going to be talking about and make sure you know. This is about New Orleans. This is about the summer of 1963. Oswald went down there in April of 63 and left in August, right?
September.
Early September. And
Late September.
while he was there, Judyth met him, and they worked on a cancer project that was supposed to be, in her mind, a cure for cancer at the Ochsner Institute in New Orleans at Tulane. Very famous place. It's there today. Dr. Ochsner discovered the link, seems obvious now, between cancer and cigarettes. But what she didn't know is that she was working on fast-growing cancers as a bioweapon for the CIA. Okay, yeah, so it's already kind of getting out there. Wait. So New Orleans is extremely important because so many characters come into play. And it's not just me up here saying this, or Judyth. The one and only case that you know about is what? Jim Garrison's case in New Orleans. He found out a lot, and he started to pursue the assassination. So that's what the whole JFK movie was about. It was about New Orleans. It was about Jim Garrison. It was about the link to the assassination there. So I want to review real quickly some of the players. You know who Oswald is? We talked about him being CIA, radar operator, recruited to be a double agent, a smart guy, fluent in Russian and Spanish. With an hour of death, the police announced the case is closed, right? He's an FBI informant on the payroll. We talked about that. Do you know we even know his number? we know his FBI informant number, and he was paid a couple $100 a month. We know that he had a double set up to buy a car, ammunition at the shooting range, visiting Cuban revolutionaries in Dallas. We know a lot of things about him. We know he had CIA handlers here in Dallas, Ruth Payne and George DeMoranshell. Okay? Now we can spend, if I go through all this, I can spend 6 hours on this, but we're not going to. That's a quick review. Oswald goes to New Orleans. This is a mugshot in New Orleans. Why was he arrested? Right? He got in a staged fight. He's promoting communism in New Orleans, right? That was all set up. That was all set up. He wasn't a communist, but it was all set up because it was to work as a cover for him in order to get into Cuba, okay, with this bioweapon. So he arrived in mid-April '63. He got a job at Riley Coffee Company, okay? He had this cover as a communist sympathizer, but he's really working on a plot to kill Castro as well. And he's working with David Ferry, Clay Shaw, Guy Bannister, Carlos Marcello, Jack Ruby, David Morales. These are the names I want you to know. Okay? If you want to take a picture of it, take a picture. You got to know these names because that's what we're talking about tonight. And I need an eyewitness that can link all these names because these names are important. This is Judyth. She was a child prodigy. Super high IQ, 160. She wins a national science contest. She goes to Buffalo working on cancer and winds up at Oxford Institute working as an intern on cancer with two of the top cancer doctors in the, hello Steve, two of the top cancer doctors in the country, Dr. Mary Sherman and Dr. Oxman, working on fast-growing cancers. Oops. She met Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans. She worked on the bioweapon to kill Castro. She had an affair on her husband and working relationship with Oswald. She had just gotten married and her husband was absentee. You can judge all that later. But she and Oswald developed a very close relationship and fell in love. She met and knew key players accused of involvement in assassination. All those names I brought up earlier, we need an eyewitness. Can you, when I explain some of these names to you, and we're going to go over some of these in the trial the last visit, you'll see why having a witness that's still alive that can link all these is extremely important to the assassination. Jim Garrison. Everybody knows Jim, right? Nod your head, you remember this. When I was growing up, I thought, well, he's that crazy guy in New Orleans that's working on a conspiracy theory. Everybody agree with that? That's what we were told. Now I found out, well, maybe he wasn't so crazy. But he brought the trial against Clay Shaw, and he couldn't prove that he was in the CIA, right? The CIA said he's not in the CIA. And then we find out now, you can go to the website, I talked about this the first night, you can go to the CIA website and they go, yeah, he was in the CIA. And we have numerous top CIA officials that wound up testifying and say, yeah, he was in the CIA. Imagine what they would have done to his case. Because they lied about it then. And they attacked him. And a lot of people died in New Orleans over this trial. A lot of people. Carlos Marcello. Everybody know who that is? Lead mob boss in the country. most powerful guy, pursued ruthlessly by RFK and the FBI. RFK had him deported to Guatemala, and he had to walk all the way back. You think he wasn't mad? And he wasn't a little guy, he was fat. Like me, I'd be really mad if you made me walk that far. Lots of evidence against him, at a minimum being involved and working with the CIA, ruled New Orleans from the 30s to the early 90s. I mean, he had a long tenure of being a very powerful mob boss. Have you heard of Judyth Vary? Maybe not so well known. Played by Joe Pesci in the movie JFK. Okay. Judyth Vary, flight instructor, pilot, very smart, liked to call himself a doctor, didn't have a license, but he knew a lot of things. Also a hypnotist, very smart, anti-communist, questioned by the FBI within 5 days of the assassination. We've got pictures of him with Oswald working in the Civilian Air Patrol, okay, connecting them. Why is that important? Because Jim Garrison went after him, saying he was involved in the assassination. If you remember from the JFK movie, he did. And what happened? He was murdered. Now, they officially ruled it, to be fair, a suicide. But if you read the autopsy report, it said he had a brain aneurysm. So how many people have you ever heard of in the history of the world that had a brain aneurysm and wrote 2 suicide notes? Pretty silly, right? Right? At least raise a question, right? Okay. Yeah, he was set to be arrested and he was murdered beforehand. Another one here, Guy Bannister, FBI special agent in charge, came out of Chicago, private investigator. Garrison implicated him as well in the assassination as a participant with Judyth Vary and Clay Shaw. Those were the 3 main guys he was going after. He died in June of '64. Okay, heart attack. There are lots of guys that died of a heart attack, and we can talk about that later. But you can just look up online. They have all kinds of ways to do untraceable heart attacks with you. And I know that sounds UFO-ish or whatever, but you can do your own research on that. So I'm not saying they killed him, but you can look at it and see. But I can tell you this, the odds of all these people dying within a few months, there were numerous ones that were related to the investigation, particularly in '64, all of a sudden just died, right? Including his, another private investigator that worked for him, Hugh Ward. And he was a pilot that trained with Ferry, and he was flying the mayor of New Orleans, and they died in a mysterious plane crash. But he ran a network and was in charge of a network of anti-communist informants in New Orleans and Tulane, and for the FBI and for Intel. Also a gun runner and munitions supplier for the Bay of Pigs. Clay Shaw, the international trademark executive, the trial, brought to trial, the JFK assassination by Garrison. And now we know he was a contract agent, right? Richard Helms, the former director of the CIA, testified in '79 that he was, and again later in the '80s in the case I'm going to talk to you about on November 2nd. Mary Sherman, she's the cancer doctor I was telling you about, and doing research at the Ochsner Research Foundation. I know that Judyth was extremely excited to get to work with her, very famous, and she has one of the most famous unsolved murders, if not U.S. history, certainly in New Orleans history. And that's all written about by a guy named Ed Haslam, who didn't even know Judyth when he wrote the book, and he talks about the cancer, bioweapon, all those things on his own research. So Judyth is just another verification of that. You can find that in her book as well. And this is Dr. Ochsner. And he ran his clinic there in New Orleans and worked with the CIA to develop this injectable cancer. One of his best friends was a former founder of the OSS and CIA, Wild Bill Donovan. David Morales. David Morales was an assassin. Was with the CIA in '51. He worked on a lot of things. We got a lot of record on him. Black Ops, he was in the Executive Action Program. The Executive Action was a program in the CIA to assassinate leaders. And it worked in ZR Rifle with Bill Harvey. Bill Harvey at the CIA headed that up, ZR Rifle. And he worked on him with that. He worked in Black Ops later in Vietnam and in Chile. He worked with Tony Vicentia out of Miami. Latin-looking man, identified as being an Ambassador Hotel when RFK was killed that day. And he's quoted by 3 different people as, an admission of killing Kennedy by saying I was in Dallas that day and we got that SOB, things like that. And he was later murdered.
They all get murdered.
So keep David Morales in mind. And then David Phillips. Now you remember we talked about him a little bit with Robert Tannenbaum. You remember what we talked about? This is the number 3 guy in the CIA, and we were trying to link him as Maurice Bishop, because Maurice Bishop was Oswald's handler. And Bob Tannenbaum had linked him. And we've got another CIA agent that came out and linked him. And we're looking for people that can link him to being Oswald's handler. Okay? And I think we may have one tonight that can help with that. He actually had told the HSCA that he wasn't Maurice Bishop, and the HSCA wanted to prosecute for perjury, but they didn't. And we know who Jack Ruby is, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him. We went through all this on the first night. You can decide what you want about Jack Ruby, but what I want to do is, if you think he was just there to kill Oswald because he wanted to spare the family going through a trial, we had numerous witnesses in Dallas that were killed, strippers and whatnot, that saw him with Oswald, that they had a relationship. So the question is, did they have a relationship or know each other in New Orleans?
You can't see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, everybody good? They know who all these people are?
You see it.
Judyth Baker, are you ready?
I don't know whether this is turned on or not.
Is she on? Can
Nope.
you hear her? Say again.
Hello?
There we go. Yay.
Great.
We're so lucky to have you here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Okay?
I'm
We're going to
grateful
go
for all
through
of
some
you.
questions. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer them, yes or no. And if you want to tell more, you interrupt me, and I'll try to do that. But I want to keep this moving along because I know Steve has some questions, and I know our audience is going to have some questions for her, right? You have a question? This is different. Most juries don't get to do this. You're as a jury, you get to ask questions, okay? I want you to get to know her. She lives here, okay? And she loves doing this.
You're not supposed to
And by the
say
way, I talked to you about her expertise in cancer research. She went underground after the assassination. That's why she's not dead. She was quiet for 30 years, didn't say anything, disappeared. And then kind of has come out. And she's endured some harassment and things like that from the government and whatnot. But we're blessed that you're alive. We're blessed that you're here to tell our story. We're blessed that you're a key witness in this thing. And so, but I do want you to know, let's get started. I had her bring her little Bible with her, okay? Put your hand on the Bible. We're going to treat this like a courtroom. Judyth Baker, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Awesome. Great. Here we go. I am not a lawyer. I'll screw this up, I'm sure, from some legal standpoint. Please don't judge me, especially my friend Steve Kennedy, who's a really good lawyer. All right, here we go. Let's do this. What got you interested in cancer?
My grandmother died of lung cancer.
Okay. What is your IQ?
160.
160. Whew. I know you're a fast reader,
I'm 80 years old, by the way.
and
so
I
I'm
was just
using it
looking at
right.
this. Judith showed me this. I've got a paper from 1960. Manatee High Senior, she's from Florida. She lived in Florida. Hunt's cancer cause, and it talks to her about her reading. You know, the average adult reads maybe 300 to 400, if they're lucky, words a minute. She reads 3,400 words a minute. That really makes me mad because I love to read. How many you read now? You still at that pace?
Oh, a couple thousand.
Couple thousand? What about comprehension?
It depends on what the subject matter is.
No. General history,
Oh, sure.
80%? Most people
Yes.
run between 60 and 80%.
I retain it.
Okay.
It's not nice to retain all that stuff.
Any idea how many languages you read? You buy books to read in other languages?
Well, I've had 4 concussions, hit by cars 3 times, so we have a little bit of disparity up there, but about 16 languages.
And given your experience in working with viruses and fast-growing cancers, it's my understanding you still speak to doctor groups today, especially given what's going on in COVID,
Yeah, I give them lectures.
on viruses
Yeah.
and cancer. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, pretty amazing. People would have to do some pretty big research to find out you were working on that back in the early 60s. When did you meet Lee Harvey Oswald?
10:30 a.m. at the post office, New Orleans, on April 26, 1963.
How long did you know Lee Harvey Oswald while he was alive?
Up to 37 and a half hours before the assassination.
Okay, and you worked together. What did you work on?
We worked on a lot of things. We were doing anti-cancer, it's complicated, let's put it that way. Basically, he was protecting our group that was working on developing you call it galloping cancer that was derived from SV40 monkey virus. And on top of that, we got involved in other things that were helping the cause, trying to get Castro.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald tell you he was in intelligence, CIA or intelligence?
I guessed it.
You guessed it? How did you guess it?
Because the man had his wedding ring on his right hand, I recognized that he had to be married like in Eastern Europe or the Soviet Union when I first met him. And when he said he had been there 30 months and he had had to denounce the United States as part of his duties, which embarrassed him because he loved his family and it embarrassed his family, and he's back in New Orleans. I looked at him and said, I know you have to be one of ours because you're a free man walking around. That's impossible. Imagine today somebody in North Korea saying they denounce their country. They're there for 30 months, come back with a North Korean wife and child, and they're walking around a free man, no impediments. Come on, impossible.
I'm looking at here a pay stub, and I know it's in your book.
That's the original.
This is the original pay stub. You saved it.
I saved all of
From
them.
Riley Coffee Company. Did you two work together? You and
We were-
Lee Harvey Oswald?
We were hired the same day. We went to Standard, which is a small company, had our records laundered for a week. On that same day, on the 17th of May, we were moved over at about 9:30 in the morning to Riley itself. I became, with no abilities whatsoever in the field, the secretary for the vice president of Riley, who was a former FBI agent. Lee, these were both cover jobs. We weren't there near as often as we should have been, but it gave us an income that we could, access.
So you worked at the same time together. This is August of 1963. You were there at the same time Oswald
No,
was.
April.
How many employees were there?
Well, at Standard, only 8,
So you had to know each other.
of course. And
Okay.
not only that, but we rode the same bus for 11 weeks. We're only one bus stop apart, and everybody on the bus was basically black, and here this young 19-year-old gets on the bus right after he does. And we go all the way to Riley, we would get off at the same spot, and they're trying to say we never met.
Did Oswald tell you why he came to New Orleans?
And not originally. I mean, you had to.
Did
He's
he
a
at
man of
some
small-
point tell
a few
you why
words.
he came to New Orleans?
Well, he came to New Orleans basically to protect our group. Castro understood that efforts were being made in New Orleans to kill him. We had troops there that were refugees and all that. They were retrained, and they were going to be sent to Guatemala. They came from Miami. Then there were people like us. Many opportunities existed to try and poison Castro, like with botulism in a diving suit, exploding cigars, you name it, they tried everything.
Did you, how often did you see each other?
Every day.
Every day. Did you fall in love?
Well, there are some days we didn't, but those days I actually can account for, like from Dick Russell and other researchers. Those days I didn't know where he was, they knew where he was.
Almost
so it
every
fits
day.
perfectly, yeah.
Did you fall in love?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Are you sure it was mutual?
absolutely.
Okay. Don't cry on me.
No, it's hard.
In your book, you write that Lee Harvey Oswald had 2 years specialized training in spycraft and Russian.
In tradecraft, yes.
Did he speak fluent Russian?
Oh gosh, yes, but it was Belarusian. Now, George Mornshield was only born about 10 miles from where Lee learned Russian in Belarus at Minsk. He thought he had perfect Russian, and it was magnificent, but it was like a Texas drawl would be here for English.
How did you know he had 2 years specialized training in spycraft?
Well, he told me.
He told you. This is important for some of the research I'm doing.
Yeah.
Did he ever mention the name Nags Head, North Carolina as a place of being
He
trained?
mentioned it in passing.
That's interesting. Okay, file that away for further day. Did you ever see Lee Harvey Oswald with Jack Ruby?
Yes, of course.
How many times?
And I separate things in my head. I saw him downstairs with him, then I brought him up into David Ferry's apartment, and then at the 500 Club, and that's 3 separate
So you
occasions
saw
in my
them
mind.
together. Do you know that they knew each other?
Oh, sure.
Why is that?
Well, Jack Ruby had been for a long, he came from Chicago, worked with Savello here in Dallas, and he was far more important than he's been made out to be just as a mere nightclub owner. For example, Savello was running Dallas for Carlos Marcello. And Jack Ruby would come from time to time to New Orleans to pick up new strippers because he had a lot of information. He'd often bring them, if he liked them a lot, he'd take them all the way to Las Vegas.
Okay, did Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby...
I just wanted to say, he knew Lee because of Marcello. They had all these parties and things, just like you see the movie The Godfather with the weddings and the dances and the things. He was a little kid running around. I mean, Jack Ruby knew him ever since Lee was like 12 years old.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby ever discuss killing John F. Kennedy?
They pretended to the outside world that they wanted to kill him because they were working with anti-Castro Cubans all the time.
It was more of an attitude than an actual execution of a plan.
It wasn't real. It was, they did this in order to gather information.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby ever talk about or work together on the cancer bioweapon?
Yeah, he thought it was fascinating. We told him he used a very big needle, and that was the problem. Anybody being injected with this, a thin needle, you see, the cancer cells would clog it. Big needle hurts, and on top of that, it has to go into a vein. So we told him that these were difficulties we would have to deal with Castro. How do you get him to take that kind of needle?
Did you ever see Lee Harvey Oswald with David Ferry?
Every day, very frequently, yes.
Okay, and so they knew each other very well. Did they ever work on a plan to kill John F. Kennedy?
To the outside world, when they're working with anti-Castro Cubans, they said they hated Kennedy and all that.
So it was more as a front.
But it wasn't real.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald ever work with David Ferry on the cancer bioweapon?
Well, we had to train him because he was selected to actually, in the end, not to actually go straight to Cuba, but to hand it off. And because nothing could be written, it was oral information. So we had to memorize things. We had to teach him how to handle it and how to keep it alive and pass that information on to the contact.
And Vary was kind of the help with the go-between to get the some of the cancer research to Sherman and others, right?
Well, it was a team. There was a ring of labs, actually. They were separated from each other. They didn't know each other, but this broke the ring so they never would be able to contact each other all the way around.
And a lot of this stuff was done at David Ferry's apartment, correct?
That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, did Lee Harvey Oswald, did you ever see Lee Harvey Oswald with Carlos Marcello?
Even I was with Lee when I saw Carlos Marcello on several occasions. And you see, Lee was a bridge. He not only worked with the CIA and he was the FBI informant, but his aunt was married to the mob. And she was Uncle Dukes. And Dukes used to be a boxer and enforcer and all that. And as he got too old, he was very fond of him, Marcello was. And he put him in a cushy position and sent all his kids to college and all that kind of thing.
Did Carlos Marcello know about the cancer research?
Yes, he did.
How do you know?
Because Uncle Dukes, actually, Marcello had to know this stuff because they were working together. It was an effort where you have many different sources that if they were going to learn about each other anyway, the way it was working. So Carlos Marcello hated Castro. Of course, they wanted to go back to Cuba and put into casinos, prostitution rings, drugs, and all that. So, of course, they would cooperate with the CIA. The other, CIA was paying them. As long as the CIA was paying them, they had no reason to kill Castro directly, so they would work with us instead. And they would keep Castro alive as long as they can, so they keep getting money from the CIA.
Did you ever meet David Morales?
Yes, but I didn't know his name at the time. HSCA showed a photo, asked some of the people asked me if I recognized. There was a large scar over his head. You couldn't see it in the photo. Then a few years ago, I saw a good photo, and it was him. And he worked splicing training film portions together.
Did you know he was CIA at the time?
Oh, sure. Anybody that was working with us.
And this film that he was working on splicing together, is this the same film that Bob Tannenbaum saw at the HSCA?
Yes.
And then it was stolen.
It was also seen by someone else. I mean, were you aware of that?
Why do you think this film was stolen?
It shows Lee Harvey Oswald working with David Atlee Phillips of the CIA, known as Bishop to all of you. They're all in the film. They have to suppress that film.
And it actually, Bob Tannenbaum quizzed you about the contents of that film in order to test the validity of your story.
With a person in between, like someone like this, so that we wouldn't directly influence each other, and we matched the descriptions. Yes.
Yeah, and Bob Tannenbaum wrote the opening foreword of your book, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Actually wrote the foreword to the book that I have available for all of you. Not only that, but a really tough trial lawyer like this gentleman here quizzed me for a whole year in Austin recently, and then he wrote the afterword for the book.
Yeah, he's pretty fiery. I wouldn't want to have Bob come after me. Did you ever see Lee Harvey Oswald with Clay Shaw?
Definitely. Although he identified himself at that time as Lambert, which is ridiculous because he'd already previously, I'd seen him at a distance and he'd been identified as Clay Shaw. Can't miss him, tall, looking very distinguished.
Did you know if at the time Clay Shaw was in the CIA?
Yes.
Really?
Everybody knew so many people in New Orleans. I mean, in 2 weeks, the people who were agency and FBI, CIA, and the mafia were just bed buddies.
All right, a couple more I got to get through right quick. In Jim Garrison's case, he showed witnesses that said that Ferry and Shaw and some of these guys were in Jackson, Louisiana,
Clinton, Louisiana.
In Clinton, Louisiana. What do you know about that?
Well, they had to inject some prisoners.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't, but I would be driven up later because I had tagged radioactive with radioactive iodine cancer cells, and these were injected. And my job was to see if those cells still existed. And understand if these cancer cells are going to divide, and they're going to divide again, then that signal's going to get weaker. So you have to get over there pretty fast. But you have to wait a certain amount of time to see if the prisoner is going to sift this out of their system. If they can, they'll live. If they can't, they'll die. So I was...
Ed Haslam wrote Dr. Mary's Monkey about Mary Sherman and the cancer bioweapon in New Orleans. Did he know you or you know him before he wrote the book?
No.
And
no.
Did you know about the book before you came public with your story?
No, it was sprung on me. In fact, Edward Haslam had met an imposter pretending to be me in 1972, and when he first heard of me and talked to me on the phone, he was cruel to me because he thought I was an imposter. So he was mean to me.
But then he asked you some really important questions about what was in Mary Sherman's apartment, bookshelves, what it looked like, describe it, and did you convince him of your authenticity?
Well, for example, I mentioned the headboard in Mary Sherman's apartment in her bedroom, because I'd read Kon-Tiki, I'd read Annapurna, I'd read all these different books that she had on that bookshelf. And the photos came out many years later. Haslam got photos several years after that, showing that in the burnt out apartment there you could see the headboard, the bed, things like that I could describe. And I actually drew out the entire layout of the apartment. I can remember every inch of it.
All right, one more before I turn it over to Steve here. How do you know, first of all, did you know about Lee Harvey Oswald's handlers being named, his name being Maurice Bishop?
Well, it was like this. He called him Mr. B. First he said Benton, then he introduced himself later to Lee as Benson, and then Lee said, oh boy, this guy he can't keep it straight, his fake names with me. Then he meets him, all right, this is just after I left and I was kicked out for objecting to, by the way, using prisoners without their knowledge that volunteer. If they get these injections, it'll kill them. That's how come I've survived this. The others were murdered. But so he finds out, he meets with Vestiana, okay, in Dallas. He finds out that his name is Bishop. So now he's Mr. B, all right. But later he realizes, because he also lived in Fort Worth for a time, he realized from plane schedules and everything else that had to be David Atlee Phillips.
So Oswald figured that out.
Yes, he did. Be at the last minute. I mean, it was not easy.
Interesting. I have more questions for you on redirect, but I'm going to turn it over to my friend Steve. And y'all give Steve a warm welcome. He's a real trial attorney, whereas I'm an imposter.
Thank you, Doris.
Do you have the other presentation?
They're loading it right now over here.
There you go.
And while
and then when he's done, we'll have to put the other one back up.
Sure. And while now there's a 50% chance I downloaded the incorrect version of this. We're about to find out. The good news is I've got the correct one in that briefcase right over there. So we're about to. Oh, I think this is it. What do you know? So before I get started, I want to tell you that I'm a skeptic.
Hey, thanks for the free advertising. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. My last name may be Kennedy, but I am a skeptic until I met Ms. Baker. I didn't believe any of this conspiracy, what I would call baloney, until I met Ms. Baker. How did I meet her? About 3 or 4 months ago, I started interviewing her. I've interviewed her on at least 3 occasions, and I have to tell you, I I'm not a fast reader, but I did stay up all night and read her book last night. And, oops, there goes something. I did,
Hand of
test,
God.
is this still working? Okay. I'm going to put this in my pocket so it doesn't fall out again.
Put on your lapel.
Well, that won't work. I'll just do this. So I read her book, and after interviewing her, there's a lot about her story that I find convincing. There's a few things I don't, and we'll cover those in a minute, but a lot about her story is very, very convincing. So, I'm going to just
Does it still have the hook on there?
there we go. I think we got it.
The man is a fast reader. It's
All right,
600
so we're going to go
pages.
through the events of early 1958, and I'll try not to be so Irish and gesticulate and talk with my hands, right? Okay, we're going to begin with the events leading up to early 1958. Maybe? Okay. All right, Dory, I have not been certified with your clicker. There we go. Which one do I
Right
click?
click.
Right click. Okay. So, in 1943, Judyth Vary is born on May 15th, to be precise, in South Bend, Indiana. I went to military school 50 miles south of that at Culver. In 1956, a tragedy occurs. Her grandmother dies. And this would forever change her life because her grandmother died of cancer when she was 13 years old. So, in 1958, at about age 15, Judyth begins her cancer research in earnest on fish that have cancer. And she's got all of this documented in her book, which you should buy and read also, but don't stay up all night reading it. Okay. Events in 1958. Now, Judyth, I've got some questions for you, and I'd like you to just confirm these facts for me from your book. Can you see this okay?
Not really.
Maybe what
Mostly.
we should
It's
do
all right.
is move her chair over so she can see this.
It's all right. It's okay.
Okay. So by 15, you're gaining a reputation for academic prowess, and you're beginning your research on cancerous fish.
Correct.
Is that correct? And you'd say that under oath.
Yes.
In 1958, at age 15, you meet Georgia Watkins, who at that time was the regional director of the American Cancer Society at an art show, and you develop a friendship with her that goes on. And then your academic achievements continue and lead you to be introduced to one Dr. Alton Oxner. correct?
Georgiana Watkins herself introduced me to Dr. Oxner.
Very good.
With the fish.
And here's a picture of him. And now Dr. Alton Oxner was an American surgeon and medical researcher. He worked at Tulane University and at other New Orleans hospitals before he established the Oxner Clinic. Still, in 1958, at age 15, a mysterious man, this guy Knut Mickelson, visits the Manatee High School where she was going to school. Mickelson is an alleged CIA spy. Is this true?
Yes.
And you can document this, that you met him. You can document this with this newspaper article, which says that Dr. Knut Mickelson, research scientist, et cetera, went to MHS classes last week, and that's Manatee High School, right? And if you look at the very top, right there where my finger is, it's 1958 where that newspaper article comes out, and it confirms what you remember, correct? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the newspaper described Dr. Mickelson as, quote, a research scientist and professor of genetics at Oslo University. And he is alleged to be a CIA operative. Is this correct?
Yes.
A comprehensive search by me and many others for photographs of Dr. Mickelson yielded no results. I looked everywhere. Dory looked everywhere, and we're not the only ones
Yeah,
looking for a picture
everybody's
of the guy.
tried.
All right, now we're moving to 1959, hopefully. Now she's 16 years old. True or false?
Yes.
Manatee High School in Florida provides you with a lab to conduct cancer research.
That's correct.
True or false? Manatee Hospital Oncology Department grants you privileges to do cancer research there.
Yes, but remember, Mickelson set this up, a lot of this up.
Correct. Nicholson
Yeah.
set this up for you. Continuing in 1959, you begin cancer research on wild mice at Manatee High School lab, correct?
Yes.
And Manatee High School Oncology Department grants you privileges to do cancer research there, again, through Dr. Mickelson.
Correct.
Now we're going to 1960, and I know I'm passing through a lot of important events, but we're moving things along. Now we're in 1960. You've been doing all of this research. You're 17 years old. And Judyth takes an IQ test.
That was at age 15. That's why Mickelson came to interview me.
Okay, well, in any event, at some point in time, you take this IQ test in Florida and you get the highest score, and Knut Mickelson goes to meet you, correct?
At age 15.
Okay. Now, this is the same Dr. Knut Mickelson who went to meet you in 1958 at Manatee High School. In 1960, Mickelson indicates he wants to recruit Judyth for future work for the CIA.
No, he had people contact me. He already contacted them, and they contacted me by 1960.
All right, so
Oak Ridge and
through
Walter Reed.
through people close to him, associated with
Yes.
Mickelson, you are informed that they want you to work for the CIA.
Not with the CIA. They simply were interested in what I was doing and supplied me with a lot of things. Like Walter Reed, for example, I was doing, if you can imagine, I was putting mice in the refrigerator, all right, to see if that would slow down their cancer and give them cancer. They
And
were
in
doing
fact,
the same
you
thing at Walter
developed-
Reed that I was doing there. I've got the paper in my book. All
You
right.
developed a new process to extract magnesium from seawater
Yeah,
at
that was
about the
something
same
else,
time, and won the science fair, and you go to the International Science Fair in Indianapolis, correct?
I won the grand prize for the state of Florida. I was the first female to do physical sciences. They wouldn't even let me have a prize to get on their big, they had a big ship I was going to be able to get on, but since I was a girl, they gave me a stinking encyclopedia.
Okay. While in Indianapolis, Judyth meets many internationally known scientists, true?
Absolutely.
And-
Werner von Braun, oh, I got to shake his hand, yeah.
And then among others, I mean, you eventually got some college opportunities and scholarships begin to roll in.
I couldn't even keep track of them.
Now we're moving to 1961 and you're age 18.
17.
Okay, well, I had the math incorrect then, apparently. So I had you 17 at age 60 and 18 and 61, but whatever. Judyth is successfully inducing cancer in laboratory mice, correct?
Excuse me, what?
You're successfully inducing cancer in laboratory mice at this point.
Yes, but then I do something that was very special.
More press coverage, including a Sarasota Herald Tribune article appears, right?
All over the country.
And you begin research with Roswell Park.
No, you're leaving tons out. What's important, very important, is that I had 2 Nobel Prize winners, you can see in my book, and 3 of the most eminent scientists. That we're talking about Dr. Ochsner, we're talking about Dr. George Moore, the Roswell Institute, and we're talking about Dr. Harold Deal, the Vice President of the American Cancer Society, in charge of all their science. All 3 of them hated cigarettes and all that, and here I had induced lung cancer with cigarette products in only 7 days with germ-free mice. It had never been done before.
And some of this is documented. There's a photograph of you at Roswell Park. You're this
Yeah, I was sent
person
there.
right here.
I was sent there then.
And this is a photograph of the students at Roswell Park, where RPM 1640 was originally developed to culture human leukemic
Yeah,
cells.
I helped develop
Leukemic cells.
this is a famous formula. It's one of the reasons I was sent to New Orleans. I had memorized this formula. I have a good memory. And it was very complex, and it could grow cancer cells faster than anything else. Is one reason they sent me to New Orleans.
And again, I don't mean to skip over any of the
It's okay.
important details. I'm doing my best to
Sure.
go through this as quickly as I can. In 1961, you're either 17 or 18 at this point. Judyth begins studying at St. Francis because she wants to be a nun and to continue her research, and that's at that
They
point
told me I couldn't
her
have
decision.
babies.
True?
Doctors are not correct. I had ended up with 5.
But you, in 61, begin studying at St. Francis.
Yes.
And you want
with,
to be a nun.
Eli Lilly, sponsored by Eli Lilly.
And you want to be a nun.
Yes, because I thought I couldn't have kids, and why would I do that to my husband?
Your father doesn't like this decision,
No.
and he goes, and you use the word kidnaps, that's not my word.
Oh, I was. He
and,
took the wrong clothes that were huge and didn't fit me or anything.
and he forces you to leave and return with him. True?
My father was an electrical engineer and he, did a lot of research and science on his own. That's why I had access to a lot of help when I was very young. I built my first TV when I was 8 years old. And my father now was an alcoholic because he couldn't be a rocket scientist, and my mother wouldn't let him immigrate over to New Mexico and Roswell, the White Sands, all that. So he began drinking a lot, and then he wanted me to run his business.
And you were a very attractive woman, and in fact, he asked you to model for him, and you did.
Yeah.
And this is one of those photos.
Well, that was part of paying my rent to
And
him.
clearly, you're obviously a very attractive woman, and your other family members learn about what's happening, and they come up with a way, and I know there's a lot more drama
Senator
and
Smathers
detail
and
to
others
this.
realized I was trapped at home. And
But you use the word rescued, you were rescued and taken to Florida.
that's right.
Okay, and there's a lot more to this, I'm skipping
And
over one.
illegally
Keep it.
put in University of Florida in February, if you can imagine, of 1962.
And hopefully you're 18 in 1961, I don't know, I've lost track.
I'm still 18.
But I've been up all night. Your family eventually takes you back to Florida, and you get a full scholarship at University of Florida in theory, but there's a big sort of issue here. You don't actually have records
That's
showing that you're in the University of Florida, so they have to be falsified.
Yeah,
Is
they
that true?
falsified them. They
And
wanted me.
Who falsified those records?
Well, this Senator George Smathers had a huge influence there. It was his alma mater, and he wanted the credit for bringing me there. And I came with a bunch of grants. I was a minor, so these grants went to different laboratories.
So, these records had to be fabricated and entered into the computer system, and somehow they managed to do that, and you're now at University of Florida.
Yeah, my
and-
dad sent the police to arrest me, but it didn't work.
And apparently, you meet and marry this gentleman, Robert Baker. Is that right?
No, I didn't marry him then. I met him and was seduced by him.
Okay, but eventually you marry him, correct?
He married me.
Okay, right now, she should be on Letterman. Well, I don't think Letterman's here anymore, but anyway. The marriage was not based on true love, right?
It was based on sex.
And
I thought it was love,
We got a great
It was-
rain today.
was for convenience. Okay. All right, from 1963. I hope you're 20 at this point, but I don't know. Let's just say
I
you're
was 19
20.
when I met Lee Oswald.
Let's just say you're 20. I don't know.
I turned 20.
In 1963, in New Orleans, Oswald and the CIA. We're going to talk about what happens in 1963 now. Now, in the spring of 1963, Dr. Alton Ochsner invites you to do cancer research in New Orleans in the lab of Dr. Mary Sherman, right?
Correct.
Okay. And here we have Dr. Alton Ochsner's picture again, just in case you forgot what he looked like. That's who we're talking about. He's the one who arranges
He's a
this
lot
for
meaner
her.
than he looks.
You are also offered a scholarship to join Tulane Medical School 2 years early, and you were going to start that in the fall of 1963, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you agree to do this. Your spring semester ends in Florida 2 weeks early, right?
It's a trimester system, yeah.
And that was earlier than anticipated, and you show up in New Orleans.
And the doctors are out of town.
But the early arrival was not planned for, so you have to stay at the YWCA, right?
Yes.
And I know that wasn't a pleasant experience. We'll skip over that.
2 strippers, a Playboy bunny, and a
Well, maybe we
waitress
shouldn't.
were my roommates.
I don't know. Okay, this seems to have stopped
It
working.
was not heaven. I had to pay 25 cents to make sure they wouldn't steal
Where should
my
I point
clothes.
this at to get this to do something? All right, my clicker isn't working again. Because we're getting to the good stuff, and now the clicker stops. All right, and now go to the next one. Oh, there we go. All right, so you eventually start working for Dr. Mary Sherman at her lab located at 3301 St. Charles in New Orleans.
I was supposed to be in the major lab at Ochsner Clinic, but they moved me. I had met Lee Oswald early on. I had knew Russian, could speak Russian, and I had been dating Tony Lopez Fresquet, who was the Cuba Castro's finance minister's son. I had all these connections, and they thought I was on the CIA side. My doctors were out of town. They told me too much, so I had to be on the secret side of things.
Okay, Judyth, you're also instructed to work in a separate laboratory located at 3300 Louisiana Parkway in New Orleans, correct?
Yes.
And would you recognize these buildings if you saw them again?
Of course.
Maybe?
Last week I put 25 people through them.
All right, well, here's 3301 St. Charles, based on Apple Maps. Is this where you did the research with Dr. Mary Sherman?
At the patio apartments, so you have on one side Harmony Street and on the other Louisiana Street.
Okay, and here's
Charles.
3300 Louisiana Parkway, New Orleans. This is where you've got this strange looking building here,
It's a
which kind of
Spanish
goes in the back
style,
like
yeah.
this. So where was the lab here?
That was in his kitchen. I know that sounds funny, but since I'd worked under primitive conditions at high school, which by the way, they were so scared they moved my lab that was in the high school under the stadium and rebuilt it there. They were terrified at all the tumors and everything I was creating. So now they say, look, you can handle this primitive area. Nobody will ever suspect.
And right about this time, you're meeting Oswald in a post office, right?
I met him, he met me.
And Oswald later tells you that he was there to protect you.
Eventually.
Okay. And you begin working at William B. Riley Company with Oswald
It's protecting
beginning the
us
same
because
day, correct?
Castro was trying to kill anybody who was going to try to kill him, of course.
And Oswald tells you that he's working for the CIA.
That took quite a while before I could get that out of him.
But he does.
Yeah,
He tells you, and you're 19, 20?
I have turned 20.
Okay, good.
My husband married me, and the next day he abandoned me. I didn't see him again for 3 weeks.
Nonetheless,
Went on
you
that way
have an
also.
extramarital affair with Lee Harvey
Sent me a
Oswald,
postcard
married
when-
with another man,
He went
correct?
to New Orleans. I'm living in New Orleans. He sends me a postcard when he's in New Orleans.
I get it. I get
Okay.
it. Yours.
Yes or no?
It's not a happy marriage,
Okay.
but while married, you're having an affair with Oswald, who's also married, correct?
Who was also miserable.
Okay, next. You're eventually introduced to David Vary. Vary is CIA, runs the clandestine lab at Louisiana Parkway, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at age 20, Baker is placed in charge of David Vary's CIA lab.
Yes.
That's your testimony.
Yes, sir.
At age 20, you want these people to believe that you were placed in charge of a CIA lab when you had never been in charge of a commercial lab before, right?
It wasn't a commercial lab. This is a private lab. And at the University of Florida, I was partially in charge of 3 labs.
And now you're saying you were doing gain-of-function research at this lab
We
to
were the
cause
first
lung
ones.
cancer in humans.
Yes.
That's your testimony. And Dr. Mary Sherman, the famous Dr. Mary Sherman, is aware of this research. And she's a part of it, and she's okay with it. True?
It was difficult for us because we had to use humans.
Judyth meets Carlos, Marcella, Clay Shaw, and eventually sees Jack Ruby next. And saw Oswald interact with Ruby at least once, probably more times. And Oswald's mission is to deliver the cancer-causing bioweapon to someone in Mexico.
A medical contact who was a Cuban.
Next. But there was a change of plan. Oswald is suddenly instructed to go to Houston to MD Anderson.
They fooled him. They got him down there. Nobody picked up the bioweapon. It was just a ploy to get
So
him there.
he's suddenly told, wait, don't do that. Don't take this bioweapon to Mexico to hand it off to somebody to go kill Castro. No, don't do that. What we want you to do is to exchange that product with someone else at the famous MD Anderson, which is now complicit in this conspiracy to kill a
You've got
foreign
it kind
leader.
of backwards.
And Oswald is
Read the
supposed to
book.
exchange his product with a fresher sample of the bioweapon, right?
Correct.
Sort of. You've got it a little messed up.
Well, that's the concept. He's supposed to exchange
He
the
switched.
product.
Yeah, they switched on him.
So, but your theory is that they intentionally wanted to get the correct product from him and give him a bogus product, right?
Yes,
That's your theory
Yes,
based on
because
speculation.
they never picked it up in Mexico for heaven's
It's all
sake.
based on speculation, though, no documents.
Of course, it's speculation.
Okay,
Not
thank you.
necessarily.
Thank
no
you for
documents.
admitting it's speculation.
Okay.
Next slide. Next slide. Oswald gets to Mexico, but there is no one for him to give the bioweapon to. So Oswald makes a feigned effort to go to Cuba to poison Castro to complete his mission. That's your testimony, right?
Your version of it, yeah.
Well, isn't this the version? All right, so are you telling me you have now changed your story from when I interviewed you yesterday, where you told me he feigned efforts to go to Cuba to poison Castro? Are you now changing your story from yesterday?
He wasn't poisoning Castro.
Who was he poisoning then?
He wasn't poisoning anybody. He was handing off a biological weapon which caused cancer. That is not poison.
To kill who?
Fidel Castro.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next slide.
Don't get caught up in specifics. It's okay. It's okay.
Oswald is ordered back to Dallas and eventually assassinates Kennedy, allegedly, right? And then you go undercover. Correct?
It's okay. It's okay.
And then you
Judas
go
goes
undercover.
under.
Okay. So I know you don't agree with this part,
Okay.
but that's how the story seems to end according to some people. And I think that concludes.
The CIA, that includes the CIA, yeah.
All right, is that the last slide? So, in summary, here's what Judyth claims. She's a genius who wanted to cure cancer and developed a method to deliver cancer to mice. Her research career eventually leads her to New Orleans. She meets Oswald, who tells her he is CIA. She has an affair with Oswald. She is the lead researcher in a CIA lab run by David Vary at the age of 20. She is introduced to crime boss Marcello. Now, I thought not many people could get close to the man, but apparently she could. She's introduced to Clay Shaw, who is also CIA, but he went by a different name, but she saw him before, and he was tall and distinguished, so therefore it has to be Clay Shaw. And she saw Jack Ruby interact with Oswald in New Orleans at least once, even though there is not a single sheet of paper to show him going to New Orleans at that time. Finally, let's talk about what you don't have. You don't have a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald and you together, do you?
Oh yeah, always two people are having an affair, make photographs of each other.
Well, you don't have a photograph of him. All right, fair enough. You don't have a photograph of him that you kept framed that you would hide and take with you.
How many people are going to defend the most hated person they think have killed Kennedy? Why would
Just
they
say
do
no.
that?
You don't
The
have.
answer is
Just say no.
no.
You don't have a letter from him, a love letter, a card.
I have writing.
Okay. And even though you've got what you claim to be something that was handwritten by Lee Harvey Oswald, you have never obtained an ink analysis or a handwriting analysis to verify that the signature of Lee Harvey Oswald was made at the time, have you?
Every time we tried, they had all these experts had already memorized this notorious handwriting, so they wanted extra money to actually put out the fact. And in other words, they wanted to be bribed.
Say
No.
True. So this could have been your evidence that you actually were with him. You have a signature on something.
I have
you could
plenty
have
of
it
evidence.
analyzed, and you haven't.
no. Don't worry.
Right?
Correct.
Yes.
And you could take an FBI light, polygraph test, and you've declined to do that also, right?
60 Minutes told me not to.
Okay, thank you. I pass the witness. Sorry it took so long. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
How you holding up, Judyth?
Wow.
You know, I've testified in court. You're putting mine on. I've testified in court quite a bit and been cross-examined, and it is not fun. It's not fun, but you did good. I probably would get in trouble for coaching the witness a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is my job to help you a little bit on cross-examination, on redirect, okay? Judyth, why are you doing this?
Because I loved him. And he loved me. It's all, really.
What does this cost you?
One of my children hasn't spoken to me since 1999 for endangering our family. I have not seen 6 of my grandchildren because of other children that don't want them around me. They're afraid that because I have been harmed, I was forced to live overseas basically between 2003 and 2020 when I got trapped here. And I had to move every 90 days for 13 years. I wore burqas, wigs, everything. And I do resent it when people say, how come you're still alive? It hasn't been easy.
Judyth, have you made a bunch of money doing this with this story?
I need teeth.
No.
No.
Is there anyone alive that saw you with Lee Harvey Oswald?
Oh, we have a number of people. They're on film and on record. One of them was the 35 minutes saying I was
I
Lee
want you to
Oswald's
tell me
mistress.
about Claudia.
Claudia Roddick, 10 years old, living with her grandmother for the summer at 1032 Marengo Street in New Orleans, my apartment manager, okay?
How many times did she see you with Lee Harvey Oswald?
She saw me with Lee Oswald so much she thought he lived there. She's on record at 2 different conferences saying so.
Did she ever see you play chess with Lee Harvey Oswald?
No, that was, his name was Mac McCullough, saw me playing chess with Lee Oswald. We have him on film and tape. There are others, like
How
Anna
many other
Lewis.
witnesses are on record for seeing you with Lee Harvey Oswald?
Well, I would add one more, but I'd say we have
There's 7.
We have 7 altogether, but some of them are secondhand. They just remember someone talking about it, you know, to them.
Is anyone on record for going on a double date with you and Lee Harvey?
Yes, Anna Lewis, her husband David Lewis, worked with Guy Bannister and with Jack Martin, who's in that film JFK.
Any of these witnesses paid or make money from you or their testimony?
No, I sent her a dozen roses, if that counts for anything.
Any of them
she lost her job for
Any
for
of them
being filmed.
harassed or threatened?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, and I feel guilty because, like, she lost her job and they tried to take her child away from her. But anyway, we have the film, it's available.
There's a, now I want you to put on your expert witness hat,
Yes, sir.
okay? And your expert witness hat, because you're such a good JFK assassination researcher, and at this same time, you're a fact witness in this case because of your background on cancer. Do you think Jack Ruby was murdered?
Absolutely.
Why?
National Archives have been working with me because a lot of my materials had actually been removed, shall we say, from the National Archives, so then they could say I never existed. And interestingly enough, they called me and said they're stapled together. We got all the records here, the hospital records. I was the first one to unstaple them and to copy them, and you have one, I gave you one. But there you can see, should I say what it's about? You have
This
it found?
slide right there, there we go. No? Go back up.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, I have the documents, and we have a copy in the book. It shows that even though Jack Ruby supposedly died of a thrombus in his leg from side effect of cancer, he was actually irradiated, including many 360s, over 500 times in only 22 days with x-rays. It's enough to boil you alive with the type of x-rays they used back then.
There we go. I got it.
In the hospital.
So you're saying, one, Ruby claimed he was injected with cancer. Who did he tell that to?
Oh, he told that to Al Maddox.
And who was Al Maddox?
Al was his jailer.
And did you know Al Maddox?
Yes,
And did you interviewed Al Maddox and he told you that?
not only interviewed-
Objection, hearsay.
Let's put
We have a lot of hearsay.
I talked to Al Maddox, and I have a signature and his written statement that Jack Ruby gave him a letter saying that he had been injected with cancer cells.
Al Maddox is on record with others besides you, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And Al Maddox also said that Ruby, who knew about the cancer project, also said the shots were really painful, and they're really painful because why?
Large needle, when you're trying to, as I said before, when you're trying to inject cancer cells, it's like jello, and they get stuck in a regular needle. It has to have the bores, has to be big enough. And then we learned from experiments that were done for us in New York that it has to be injected into a vein. It can't be done into a muscle because it'll just make necrotic tissue.
And all this happened when all of a sudden there was a change of venue for a new trial in Wichita, Texas.
Yeah,
And Ruby's
coincidental.
family claimed he was denied medical care. And interestingly, you talk about the 500 x-rays in 22 days. Were x-rays more potent in 1960 whatever than they are today?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I'm also under the impression that at one point he was on an x-ray for 30 minutes.
45 minutes.
That's nuts. That's just absolutely nuts.
Then
He
put
showed
Lidocaine
symptoms
in
of
his mouth.
radiation poisonings, given no cancer treatment for cancer too late. There's another reason that is highly suspicious here, that he may have been murdered. Who gave him the shot.
His name was Jolyon West, Dr. West, with MK Ultra. That's on record.
Dr. Jolyon West. This is really interesting. You can look him up. He worked in the MK Ultra program, if you know about that, mind control of the CIA, under Sidney Gottlieb, who was head of the Technical Services Division, which, by the way, is a tangent. That Technical Services Division in the CIA was in charge of printing all Secret Service documentation. We only got 5 minutes here. Anyway, he was appointed, amazingly enough, as Jack Ruby's psychiatrist, and next thing you know, he breaks down and he's unable to testify for the Warren Commission, and then he gets shots and he gets cancer and he dies.
In 22 days.
Interesting coincidence. This is in her book. This is her research. She found this. No other JFK researcher found this. And you found this from the National Archives, right? This is from Parkland Hospital.
Yes.
All the x-rays that Jack Ruby got in 22 days. Pretty amazing. Is there anything you would like to add, Judyth, as a statement?
I appreciate the opportunity. I thank all of you for being here. It's not easy to talk about these things. I much prefer that I never had to. But I owe it to our country, I owe it to you, I owe it to my beloved Lee Oswald. To think that I would stand up here and say, or sit as I am, that I would defend somebody that's considered horrible, and to bring up these things that are hard to believe. But I kept the records. You have a record. I think you could show them.
Yes, I did. Here's another record. I didn't show them, but this is the pay stub that she got from 60 Minutes and CBS.
They never do
Morley
that.
Safer, all those guys. They did a whole bunch of things on her. My understanding is this is the first time they paid someone for their time because they didn't air it. They went all the way to the top. They did all this research on her, background checks, kind of the hurried job we did with Steve today. They went through all of that. They decided they were going to air it. They went through the top, and the last minute it got canceled. And several of the guys got so mad they quit their jobs. Anyway, but we have the pay
At
stub
14
here.
months, they tried 3 times to film me, and higher up stopped it. That's why they gave me money. Can you believe that? They never had done that before.
Judyth, I appreciate you being here today. We got a lot of good facts on record. They're going to help me for my next presentation on the trial that we've never heard about. Right now, I'd like to take some questions from the audience. And we need our microphones.
What caused you, or how soon after the assassination did you go underground?
Excuse me. Can you say that
How
again?
soon after the assassination did you go underground?
I was. They had put me in a big fancy lab because when they kicked me out of New Orleans, they knew reporters would say, "What happened in New Orleans?" I was in a very fancy lab, and I actually was fired because of tears on my lab books. And from then on, I couldn't get hired anywhere that way. And I became an English teacher, university English teacher.
Question.
That's how it started.
Oh, go ahead.
How would you describe Lee Harvey Oswald? What type of person was he? Gentleman,
Good question.
scholar, an aggressive man, ambitious?
All right, there's no way I would have been interested in a stupid man. Understand? He was fluent in Russian. He could pick up languages very easily. He was a very wise, unbelievable that he was only 23 and had such wisdom. I'll give you an example. I'll do this quickly. So I didn't believe in God at all at this time because I had offered my life to God, and God, I got kidnapped out of the nunnery. Obviously, God doesn't have that much power. That's the way he looked at it.
Don't be pointing at me when you're saying that. Okay?
So here I asked Lee what he thought about religion. He said, well, it's like this. You have all these different religions, and they're saying, I heard from God. He said, I don't think God's a very good communicator. Therefore, I'm not responsible. I thought that was very wise. It's an example of someone who could think very deeply, was trying hard. He had read the entire encyclopedia. He was good at chess, but he had let people beat him because he wanted to see how they thought. He's a very intelligent man. And by the way, we're getting more and more evidence of that from Marines that worked with him and all that, Doctor. We have Judge Jimbo Telho gave me 5 records that belonged to him and Lee that they bought together. And it says love to Jim and all that because we talked a lot. And he knew that Lee was being prepped to become a spy. But when he tried to tell the Warren Commission, they wouldn't put it in.
Judyth, thank you. I'm going to ask you a 2-part question.
Yes.
When you call him Lee, I notice you all call him Lee Oswald. Others call him Lee Harvey Oswald. Interesting observation. If he had lived and was not shot and killed, and went to trial.
Excuse me, I can't hear you. You're close to the microphone. Can you pull back from the microphone a little bit?
Sure, can you hear me better?
Yes.
Thank you. If he had lived and gone to trial, was able to defend himself, the 2-part question is, how would he have defended himself? And what facts would he have used to defend himself? And secondly, I noticed in an article from this Quora website, this gentleman named Jim Morrison, who lived in Washington from 1952 to 2018. He said that Oswald asked to place a phone call to North Carolina while he was being set up. 2 FBI agents went to the police switchboard, told the questions they would be, told the operator they would be monitoring the call.
I'll take that call in a minute.
Okay.
You do the first part.
So then the question is, he asked to talk to someone in North Carolina, and this gentleman referred this North Carolina person being tied to the CIA.
Yeah.
So how would he defend himself?
It would have been very difficult. First of all, the CIA would deny everything. They always do, all right? Number 2, if he had said I'm CIA, the agents and the contacts he had made in 30 months in the USSR, they would have executed them. You see, the CIA knew that he would never betray his own. They did that to him anyway.
Would you have come out of hiding to testify on his behalf?
I would have, yeah, had that happened.
But
Later-
you know what?
later I
Sheriff
couldn't.
Curry came out and said, we cannot put Oswald in that floor, in that window, with that gun, shooting the president.
In Garrison's,
That's where you
yeah.
start with the defense. You don't start with someone else did it. You start with, I didn't do it. And I'll get to that phone call in just a minute. Let's hit yours.
Yeah.
Oh, let's hit her first. She's at her, get her.
Was there any investigation in Ruby's psychiatrist? And whatever happened to him?
Oh, the JFK researchers are all over that psychiatrist. But of course, the federal government is not. He's very well known about. Yes, sir.
So I'm curious, if ever during 1963, did you figure out that the CIA was involved with your research, or did that come later? And secondly, what happened to the X-rays of Ruby?
It's very odd what happened to the X-rays. I know, for example, they X-rayed him completely once on an expired set of films, so none of it came out. So they re-X-rayed him the same day again with a new roll of film. They were very careless, and we have not been able to discover any of them. We do have pathology, so we can where they describe the X-rays, but it's very general. There was no reason whatsoever to X-ray him so many times and so thoroughly. A 360 covers your entire body. I mean, you can look in the book and you'll see how many times they did that to him.
Was there ever any questioning about the handling of JFK coming in for treatment to the hospital? As far as I know, we had one of the doctors living here at Rosen Ranch for a while.
Yeah. Any question about his handling in the hospital?
Yeah, do they-
Not at Parkland, at Bethesda.
Oh,
At Bethesda, that's where all the shenanigans happen.
Yeah.
And that is a whole deal. I've done that another
I
year.
even
I'll
have,
probably do
yeah.
something again next year on it. But it gets as crazy as can be. Real quick on your question, Oswald placed a call. Who would you call? Mom, dad, a friend, a lawyer, right? He calls John Hurt. He wants to call John Hurt in North Carolina. John Hurt was his handler. Okay, Nags Head, North Carolina. Remember I asked her that question? That's who John Hurt was. You can look him up. CIA. John Hurt, H-U-R-T. Phone number. We had it. I've looked this phone number up. There's actually one researcher that's a professor, does his whole presentation at a research conference.
His name is
and it's
Grover
on
Proctor.
that phone. Yeah, it's on that phone call. Basically, the FBI blocked him from the call. They wouldn't let him call. Yeah,
Grover
and
Proctor
we
is a
had
good friend of
testimony
mine. He's been a friend of mine for 20
from
years.
the operators that blocked the call. But what's interesting, and one of the things I was able to put together is there's another guy named Tosh Plumley, who was a CIA pilot, and he flew people in for an abort plan on the assassination that day. I haven't told you much about it. It's a nice little story. He grew up here in Dallas, and he tested very well, and the CIA picked him up, and he flew men, arms, munitions, reporters, women, and mob and whatever down for Batista, then for Castro, then for the anti-Castros. And then for the assassination, Pentagon calls him and says, you need to fly a team to Dallas to abort a mission for the president. Tosh is still alive, by the way. And he's on record. You can type his name in, and you can see his testimony. Tosh gets thrown in jail after the assassination. Okay? He's at Dealey Plaza. He hears the gunshots over his ear, and they leave. The walkie-talkies don't work, and they don't know what's going on. He goes back to the airport. They fly some of the members to Miami. Some of them don't show up, including E. Howard Hunt and Johnny Roselli. And when he lands, the FBI takes him, puts him in jail. He says, why? $50 hot check. I didn't write a $50 hot check. They say you shouldn't have gone to Dealey Plaza. He gets in jail. He makes his phone call, not to mom, not to dad, not to the lawyer. Guess who it was to? John Hurt, North Carolina, his handler. Tosh knew Lee Harvey Oswald. He testifies Oswald was O&I in the CIA, and is another verification that we have. Okay, so this gets to my last question because it's time to wrap up, right? Okay, one more question. Judyth Baker, what do you think Lee Harvey Oswald was doing in Dallas? And tell me about your last conversation with him.
This is difficult for me. It was our last phone call, and he said if he made it to Laredo, that I was supposed to get on a plane and meet him. We have the FBI went to Laredo and raided both banks there, and they said they found nothing. They said they raided the lockers at the bus stations and said found nothing. That is just simply not true. He told me he stashed things there in case he could get out alive. But he was going to stick it out because in the end, he said that he had saved, he said, he never bragged. He said, I believe I saved Kennedy's life in Chicago 3 weeks ago. And I told this, when I first told this, nobody believed me. But now we have James Douglas and we have Abraham Bolden. They're on record as witnesses and after the fact. But Abraham Bolden was present when the Secret Service, as part of the Secret Service in Chicago, when the FBI called and said, stand down, the president's not coming. An informant helped us, and they arrested armed men. The informant's name was Lee.
So Lee Harvey Oswald
So
was
Lee
trying
told
to
me
do
he's going
what?
to die. He said he's not going to get out alive. He said they're probably going to.
Listen, Lee Harvey Oswald was trying to do what for
He was
JFK?
trying to save his life.
Thank
He
you.
was opposite of everything you've been told.
If you'd like to visit with Judyth some more, she'll be signing books out here. Please buy one. It is loaded with evidence, and she mixes in her testimony with top-notch JFK assassination research. And amongst us researchers, it's one of the top 5 books of the thousands that are out there. So it's a good one to have. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
November 2nd, we'll be talking about the trial you never had heard about, and it's basically a trial on the CIA. So it'll be very interesting.